as I speak. So this shouldn't take too long. Right. Okay, audio is working as it should. The stream's up, the chat's up, we're all good to go. That is absolutely fantastic. Well, hello everyone and welcome to round 3 of the PlayStation America series here on Race Spec Esports. I'm Lane Everingham, your commentator for this event, and this time we're racing at Autodromo Nazionale Monza for the Italian Grand Prix. Constructed in 1922, the fabled Temple of Speed is one of the most iconic cornerstones on any Formula One calendar. It celebrates its 100th anniversary this year, a momentous achievement, especially considering that only one other currently existing circuit has achieved such a feat, the world-renowned Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Monza is a simple circuit of 11 corners and a length of 3.6 miles. But beware, hidden within the simplicity of the circuit lies nasty hazards that can catch drivers out at a moment's notice. There are tall, unforgiving inside curbs, both in Variante Rettifiglio and Variante della Roggia, that, if touched, will vault the car up into the air. There is the massive gravel trap looming on the outside of the Lesmo curves, waiting to catch someone out. And finally, the most demanding part of all, Variante Ascari, a high-speed left-right-left complex that forces the car to be right on the edge of grip. Going over that edge will result in a spin, which, more often than not, results in a race-ending accident. DRS trains are going to be a major topic of conversation during this race. When they start to form, overtaking becomes incredibly difficult. As a result, qualifying is going to be an important factor for achieving victory today. But before we focus on qualifying, there's a fair bit of news to go through first from last week's race at Zandvoort. There were a ton of incident reports sent in. We'll go through them as quickly as I possibly can. There was an incident between SC Collider and Guitar Hero. The result being Guitar Hero was given a 15-second time penalty and 3 penalty points. But that was reduced to 10 seconds as Guitar Hero managed to get a 5-second time penalty removed next to his name. There was an incident between Renner Jr. and Axis, and as a result, the podium finisher, Renner Jr., was given a 10-second time penalty and 2 penalty points for an avoidable collision. There was an incident, the final safety car restart, most notably, where it was all sort of messy, and then a report was made about that. The result from the stewards is no further actions because there wasn't enough footage to really put anybody at blame. There was an incident between Refixer and Easy Rider. As a result, Refixer was given a 5-second time penalty and 1 penalty point. There was also an incident between Collider and Hash in the Ferrari. The result being Collider was given a 5-second time penalty. And finally, an incident between Refixer and JBH. The result of that, a 15-second time penalty and 3 penalty points for Refixer. As a result, he would have 20 seconds worth of time penalties and 4 penalty points, which means Refixer should not be able to set a proper flying lap in this qualifying session. Because of those 4 penalty points, he has a qualifying ban for this race. So I think he'll only do 1 lap, or sort of 1 proper lap to confirm the setup and go back into the pits. But he shouldn't cross the line to set a lap time, otherwise you'll be in trouble. So, if you want to know who moved where in terms of the penalties, Renner Jr. would move from P3 to P8 in the final results. Guitar Hero would move from P5 to P9. Collider wouldn't lose position with the time penalty. In fact, he would move up from P11 to P10 because Refixer, because of his 20 seconds worth of time penalties, moves from P10 to P12 in the final results. In the Drivers' Championship, Nico is leading on 60 points, followed by Mighty Wombat in the McLaren on 40. Next is Easy Rider in the Red Bull on 38, followed by JBH on 27 and Collider on 23, as Refixer goes back into the pits as he should. After Collider, there is Axis in P6, followed by Rafa in P7, then Hash in the Ferrari, Reserve drivers Sir Jake is P9, followed by Captain Schmeg, rounding out the top 10. In the Constructors, AlphaTauri are leading on 60 points, followed by McLaren on 46. Red Bull Racing are next on 41, followed by Mercedes on 31. 1 point behind is both Aston Martin and Williams, both on 30 points. Then Ferrari on 24, Alpine on 23, Haas on 9, and at the bottom of the order is Alfa Romeo on 4 points. But with all of that out of the way, we can now focus on qualifying. A lot of news to go through after a very dramatic week of racing at Zandvoort. And I don't think the drama is going to stop anytime soon, especially here at Monza. Now, I'll just quickly change this to miles an hour for our American audience. Now, currently in this qualifying session, it is Nico, our championship leader, on pole position with a 1 minute 19.971. But Black Baller and KD are on flying laps, making their way through Variante Ascari. As I mentioned in the intro, probably the most demanding part of the racetrack. Very high speed. You're right on the edge of grip. You make a mistake, you're more than likely going to end up in the barrier. Black Baller heading up to probably the most important corner on the racetrack, Parabolica, turn 11. This famous final turn will dictate how much speed you carry down the long main straightaway, as Black Baller sets the slowest time of the session at 22.9, as KD actually decides to go back down pit lane. Shizen's making his way out of Variante della Roggia and heading into the famous Lesmo curves, turn 6 and 7. A bit like Parabolica, turn 7 is another important corner on the racetrack where that can happen. Shizen has lost control and put it into the barrier on the inside of the racetrack. Shizen is out of qualifying and will most likely start at the back of the grid with Refixer. But it is an incredibly important corner, the second Lesmo, as it dictates how much speed you carry towards Variante Ascari, a section that Guitar Hero has just made his way out of now. Down the back straightaway towards Parabolica, the final turn. Braking point is at the 50-meter board. Entry speed 210 miles an hour. Coming out of the right-hander, heading down the main straightaway. Guitar Hero will finish his lap to set a 20.8. Goes 8th quickest with that time. JBH making his way out of Variante Rettifilio, the opening chicane. Now round Curva Grande, turn 3. Absolutely flat out through this right-hander. You want to try and keep it nice and narrow to the inside of the racetrack. He completes the first sector and heads into Variante della Roggia. Out to turn 5, using plenty of curb on the outside. Now into turn 6, the first Lesmo curve. See, they're modulating the throttle nicely. Running wide, though, and copping a warning. And as a result, his lap time is now invalid. There's also a soft tyre still on the racetrack, thanks to Shizen's accident a few moments ago. We're right on board here with Mighty Wombat, give you a proper tour of the racetrack. So coming out of turns 1 and 2, we're heading up towards Curva Grande. You can see keeping it nice and narrow around this flat-out right-hander. Now heading up towards Della Roggia. Entry speed at 206 miles an hour, bringing it down to third gear, clipping the first apex, clipping the second, as somebody's dropped out. It's the host, I think. That's KD, who was dropped out of the session. Oh, a bit of a wiggle there. Coming out to turn 6, around turn 7. That wasn't a human response. Oh. What's happened? Okay, that's odd. I think I might have dropped out of the session, or something happened with the host. This is definitely new. Yeah, it seems that I disconnected. Well, fun. Hopefully I'll be able to rejoin. Give me a minute. That's strange. I don't know why I decided to disconnect for. That's new. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. Oh good, the session no longer exists. Well, I'm gonna have to restart the app, I guess. But if I do that, that's gonna cut off the stream. So, I'll try again, just quickly. If this doesn't work, I will have to close the application, which in turn will cut off the stream. So, oh, okay, no, that's fine. Well, don't have to cut off the stream, but we do miss a chunk of qualifying. That's really frustrating. Oh. Anyway, we'll get back to live action in a few moments. Good to see this game is working at a sensible manner. Alright. Alright, we're back. Telemetry's good, lab data, everything's working as it should. Now. Do have Sector 3 yellow flags, that's somebody going slowly, that's okay. But in the meantime, KD has jumped up to pole position with a 19.5. He's got 3.5 tenths over this man, Blockman, in P2. And we've now got 7.5 minutes left in qualifying, so if the game doesn't decide to shaft me, we should be able to see the business end of qualifying, which is the most important part to watch. Captain Schmeg is making his way out of Variante Retifilia. I think he's just finished the flying lap. He's currently P4 with a 19.9. Axis on an out lap, apparently, but he's absolutely dumped his battery and fuel. He can't be on an out lap. He must be on an in lap. Hash making his way out of the second Lesmo. He's on an out lap getting ready. JBH is on the flying lap, making his way out to turn 3, heading up towards Variante della Roggia. We're right on board with him and give you a proper tour of the racetrack that was rudely interrupted by the game. Out to turn 5, heading up towards turn 6, the first Lesmo curve, bringing it down to 5th gear, back on the accelerator, doesn't run wide, heading up towards turn 7, bringing it down to 3rd gear, clipping the apex nicely and using a healthy amount of curb on the exit as well. DRS Hopen heading up towards Variante Ascari, heading underneath the famous oval overpass that used to be part of this racetrack, bringing it down to 5th gear, back on the accelerator, clipping the apex at turn 9, avoiding the inside curve at turn 10. That inside curve is slightly elevated, so you want to try and get as close as you can to it without touching, because if you do touch it, the car becomes incredibly unsettled. Around Parabolica, the final turn on the racetrack, turn 11, using a healthy amount of racetrack as well, using the full width of the circuit. Up towards the line, it's a 20.4 for JBH, P7 for the Mercedes driver. Now Nico, I believe he's on an in-lap. He's currently P2 with a 19.6, just under a tenth behind KD, our current pole sitter. Mighty Wombat getting ready to set a flying lap. Heading around Parabolica, 5th gear, he'll floor it midway round the corner, nice and wide on the exit, and heading down the main straightaway towards turn 1. He'll open DRS, prepare himself for the opening turn. Watch the speeder climb over 215, 216, 217 miles an hour as he heads into turn 1. 2nd gear, keeping it at 2nd, then short shifting to 3rd at the exit of turn 2. Heading around a Curva Grande Red Bull out on track right there. That must be Motion God, who is currently 14th. First sector says for Mighty Wombat, he's up by a tenth and a half through Variante della Roggia. 4th gear, modulating the throttle nicely. No hint of oversteer, no hint of understeer compared to the Williams behind, who had a whole heap of oversteer. That must have been Rafa in P13 having a moment out of turn 5. Out of turn 7 for Mighty Wombat, he'll open DRS and head up towards the middle sector split. What does the clock say for the McLaren driver? It says he's up by just under 2 tenths, so he's found time to the middle sector. Coming out to turn 10, heading down the back straightaway towards Parabolica. One final corner to negotiate, and it's not an easy one, that's for sure. We're braking at the 50 board, hard on the brakes, bringing it down to 5th gear, and gently applying the accelerator, not too hard, otherwise you will lose the car. and he'll actually decide to go back into the pits. Interesting. It mustn't have been a very good final sector from Mighty Wombat. It looked alright from the outboard view. Onboard view might have told a different story. KD up by 200ths to the first sector as he makes his way out of turn 5, heading towards the Lesmo curves. Brings it down to 5th gear, back on the accelerator, then reaches full throttle just before corner exit. Now into the second Lesmo, turn 7. Uses plenty of curve on the outside. Sparks fly, actually, as he ran over that exit curb. Down towards Variante Ascari. The clock says for KD, he's up by 1.5 tenths. Into turn 8, 5th gear, back on the accelerator through turn 9. Oh, he's actually invalidated. I think he did that at turn 8. Just cutting a little bit too much. Really unfortunate, but it's really easy to do at Ascari. That turn 8 curb is quite short, so you can cut quite a bit of it as Collider jumps up to P3 in the Alpine with a 19.895. Axis making his way out of turn 2, heading towards Curva Grande. 7th gear, then he'll bring it up to 8th gear, absolutely flat out through here as he heads up towards Variante della Roggia. Up by a 1/10 of a second in the first sector for Axis. Clips the two apexes very nicely. Now up towards the first Lesmo curve, bringing it down to 5th gear, back on the accelerator, using a healthy amount of curve on the exit. Now into turn 7, missing the apex by a little bit there. You can hit that inside curve at turn 7, but Axis carries nice speed down this straightaway towards the middle sector split, and he's up by 0.3 of a second. Oh, he had a second go at turn 8. He thought he turned in too early, turned out of the corner, and had another go. He would have lost a fair bit of time with that mistake. Now heading down the back straightaway towards Parabolica. Entry speed 210 miles an hour. Apex speed at about 120. Coming out to the final turn, heading up towards the line now for Axis. And the clock says he's improved by only a 1/10. So he lost a fair bit of time in that final sector, thanks to that mistake at Variante Ascari. Rebellion on an in-lap, it seems. Collider going in the pits. Blockman, ooh, almost going into the wall there. Dear me. As he's trying to get his tyres up to temperature. Rafa on an in-lap, it seems. He's out of fuel as well, bringing out yellow flags. Renner Jr. getting ready to set a flying lap. Renner was removed from the podium thanks to a time penalty from last week's race. Ended up finishing in P8. I'm sure he's looking for a better result here at Monza. Motion God looks like he's going back into the pits. Black Baller has just started a flying lap, making his way around turn 3, hugging the inside like it was his favourite granny, as Martin Brundle would put it. Bit of lag there from Baller's end, and he's currently down by a 1/10 of a second to the first sector. JBH, contrastly, is up by 0.5 tenth to the first sector, making his way through the second Lesmo. It seemed that it wasn't a great run through turn 7. We'll see what the clock says for JBH. It didn't look quite right. Clock says, no, he's found time. Just that outboard shot made it look like he cut way too much of the second Lesmo. Yellow flags are out in sector 3, as I believe Axis goes into the pits. Pulling out of the slipstream, JBH passes the McLaren of, I believe, KD 1997, as Guitar Hero retires in the pit lane, and he's now out of qualifying. Best he can hope for is P12. JBH, meanwhile, crosses the line, jumps up to P7, improving by 0.3 to the final sector to set a 1 minute 20.138. Now, attention turns to the top 4 as Blockman is making his way towards the final corner. Current best time is a 1:19.9. In order for him to try and challenge for pole position, he needs to find about 3.5 tenths as he makes his way out of Parabolica, up towards the line for Blockman. He'll set a 19.7. It's P3 for the Alfa Romeo driver. KD's making his way out to turn 5, heading towards the first Lesmo corner, and Nico has spun out. He improved by 2 tenths to the middle sector, but that's been ruined with a mistake at Ascari. Oh, and KD's made a mistake as well. Incredibly similar to Shizant. He's crashed into the wall at the exit of turn 7. His qualifying is over. Oh, and Captain Schmeg puts it into the wall. Oh, and oh dear, that's a very interesting looking tyre barrier. Yep, Schmeg's session is done. In fact, I think everyone's done. Yep. JBH has invalidated this lap. He doesn't have the fuel anyway to push. He's actually out of fuel. He's in low fuel mode. So there we are. A dramatic end to qualifying, but not in the way that you might expect. A lot of crashes, a lot of spins at the end of qualifying. But it's KD who will start from pole position from our championship leader, Nico. That is the front row. Next row is Blockman and Mighty Wombat. So a solid qualifying from McLaren. Yeah, quite right, Bag Spinalas everywhere. Very fitting considering we are in Italy. So, the results from quali. KD will start from pole position, out qualifying Nico by just under 1/10 of a second at the end of qualifying. Blockman will start P3, followed by Mighty Wombat, then Collider in P5 for Alpine, then Axis P6, Captain Schmeg in 7th, JBH inside the top 10 in 8th, followed by Rebellion in 9th, and Hash rounds out the top 10 in the Ferrari. Outside the 10 we have Rafa in P11, followed by Guitar Hero, Renner Jr., Motion God, Black Baller, and now one retirement was Shizen, unable to set a lap time, and Rafixer, he had to serve a qualifying ban, so he'll be starting from the back in 17th position. Race time, and I did get a weather report from KD. We shouldn't be seeing any wet weather interference for today, which is great. Dry weather racing usually is quite a lot better than wet weather racing, usually. Here at Monza, though, sometimes wet weather racing can be more interesting because of the nature of the racetrack. DRS trains tend to form quite a lot. Again, what is going on here? I've been disconnected from the session again. Far out. Really quite annoying. Stupid game. I might have to restart my the application rather. That's just silly. Let's try this. Session no longer exists. Of course it doesn't. Show me that last time. Let's try the other invite. Session no longer exists. Great. Alright folks, what I'm going to have to do is cut off the stream here, restart the application, then I'll restart the stream. This is going to have to be a two-parter. This game just doesn't want to flame and work today, so we're going to do that. So I'll be back in a few moments.